I just want them to play the best players. I don't want them to go out of the way to, start Plumlee, for example. Screw that.
All right, let's move to the Charlotte Hornets, Mort.
Yes.
Who, again, vibes are much better with the Charlotte Hornets than they've been in a long time. LaMelo Ball, defied any reasonable expectations coming out of the gate. It was so much better than expected right away. It took him a little bit to break into the starting lineup, but once he did, there was just no way he was giving that spot back. And he looks like a star. Looks like a future star in the making. He is the guy they've been waiting for, since they lost Kemba Walker. And honestly, it might be sacrilegious to say this to Charlotte fans, but LaMelo Ball has a higher ceiling than Kemba Walker ever did. So, this is the guy they can build around for the next 10 years. So, much like we talked about with Denver and Jokic, I think that needs to be the primary focus for Charlotte moving forward, is how does every other piece we get fit next to LaMelo Ball? With that said, they also, Terry Rozier, we've talked about a bunch, has gotten significantly better. They just extended him this offseason. Gordon Hayward, probably overpaid still, but he had a nice season for them last year. Almost 20 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, shot above 40 from 3. They did lose Devontae Graham this offseason. So that brings me to same question I asked for Atlanta. Who should start for the Charlotte Hornets this year? Obviously, LaMelo's locked in, Rozier's locked in, Hayward's locked in. Who should be their starting, 3, 4, and then center?
I think it's pretty simple. It's LaMelo and Rozier at the guards. It's Hayward and Bridges at the forwards, and then you play PJ Washington as an undersized center. Just switch everything. Because that lineup, outside Rozier, who's 6'1", there's a lot of size there. Like LaMelo is what, 6'6"?
I believe so.
6'5" or 6'6". I think 6'6".
Yeah,
exactly. Like Bridges, even though he's listed as 6'6" as well, 6'7", 6'6", 6'7", he's big. Like he's really big and he's athletic. Like he plays bigger. PJ Washington is also like in that 6'7", 6'8" range. But he's long-armed. Defensively, he's active. I just want them to play the best players. I don't want them to go out of the way to, start Plumlee, for example. Screw that. That doesn't make sense. Go all out with your best players. See what you can figure out. This is a team that is shouldn't be in no rush to be, doing a Atlanta and making the Eastern Conference Finals. That doesn't matter. Not right now, at least. Do you want to get better? Absolutely. That I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't try to win as many games as possible, but development is key here, and chemistry as well. You would want to get the guys that are presumably going to be there long term to get as many reps alongside LaMelo as humanly possible. That means putting them on the court with him, especially in the starting lineup, and playing him a lot of minutes alongside those guys. PJ Washington, Miles Bridges are the two primary guys I look at that as moving forward, because I still think there's an attractive element there in a trade piece in Terry Rozier if someone with a win now agenda is trying to strengthening their guard depth, for example. So I'm not locking him in as a future Hornet for the next 5 years. And same could be said for Gordon, who's 31, I want to say. I think he was born in 90, right?
Yep. March 23rd, 1990.
Yeah. So he's going to be 32 later this year. Or later this season. Yeah, that's what I mean. I just want the guys who are in a similar age bracket as LaMelo to get as many reps with him as possible. That's those guys. And if you pivot from Rozier or Hayward down the line, you have guys like JT Thor, Kai Jones, who you can give minutes to. And, of course, James Bouknight.
Yeah, because last year, they messed around and started Bismack Biyombo as their center for 36 games. Whew. And Cody Zeller started 21 as well. Both of those guys are no longer on the team. So center is definitely the biggest question for me. They did go out and acquire Mason Plumlee. And then they drafted Ty Jones. I don't think he's a real candidate to start. I would be surprised just because he had the reputation of being somewhat raw coming in. So I hear you on Washington, and I would like to see that as well. I have a feeling they're going to start Plumlee at the beginning of the year.
Yes, I do too.
But I your logic is sound. You know, like build around the guys in that same age range. And again, it's like the question is the fit next to LaMelo. Like Mason Plumlee is not a long-term piece next to LaMelo Ball, but I think they're also trying to bridge, you know, win now versus develop and win later. So
many teams are doing that. Can we just take a minute and talk about that? Like everyone is doing that because they saw Boston do it.
Yeah,
Boston didn't win doing it. What exactly?
I mean, they made 3 Eastern Conference Finals.
They made 3 Eastern Conference Finals.
I think so, right?
When?
In the last couple of years.
Was it 3?
Yeah, they made 3. 2016, 17, 2017, 18, and 2019,
All right,
20.
fair enough. But they didn't win a ring. But you're right. I concede. That is actually true.
Yeah, I mean, and Charlotte does not have the type of win later talent that Boston did. Like they don't. I mean, LaMelo is great, but Boston had a lot more win now talent.
Yeah, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this one because like the 2016-2017 season, that was before Tatum, though.
Yeah, it was with Brown was there, but
right. But he was a rookie. Like I'm talking about the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown era when they're a little bit more fleshed out.
Yeah. Well, then they had 2 Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, but I mean they were super young. That one thing was the Kyrie Irving year. Fair enough. That said, I mean, I just don't understand why so many teams are jumping in on that wagon, like going, "Hey, let's do both of these things at the same time." Like I would understand if we saw a team come out and win multiple championships, and then teams were like, "Okay, that's the path forward." We haven't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there are a couple like OKC clearly is not. Mm-hmm. Memphis, I would say, is not, even though they have John Morant. Like what they've done this summer, we talked about a few episodes ago. They're just kind of shuffling pieces around still. But I think the danger of when you have a generational prospect, we're seeing it with New Orleans, where they've gone 2 years since drafting Zion and not making the playoffs, and we're already hearing like some of Zion's family members want him to get out.
Right.
So I think that especially if you're playing for a small market team like Charlotte, and LaMelo Ball falls into your lap because Golden State took James Wiseman over him.
Yeah.
You have to have you do have to. I mean, maybe you don't have to, but like you have to at least worry about, okay, if we just totally suck and we don't even try to build a competitive team, is LaMelo's father, who is a very boisterous media presence, does he start re-emerging from the shadows and start complaining about, my kid's too good for this team, like they don't even try. So I think it's a tricky balance. And that isn't to say that PJ Washington and Miles Bridges aren't going to get minutes. I think they absolutely are and should, because you're right. Like overall, big picture, this Charlotte Hornets team this year is not going to win the championship. So developing these younger guys, getting them reps, getting them as many minutes as possible is going to be really valuable for the later. But clearly you don't go out and sign a Gordon Hayward if you're not also trying to at least, be competitive now, like get within range of a playoff appearance or at least the play-in tournament, which is where they were last year. It's been 5 years now since they made the playoffs, and they haven't gotten past the first round since coming back to the league in 2004, 2005. So I think there's probably pressure on, like Michael Jordan is probably feeling pressure to, at least get this team into the playoffs and like win their first playoff series in 15 years.
The issue I have with that logic still is if you want the young guys to get better, having someone like Gordon Hayward, who is 10 years older than LaMelo, 10 or 11, right? coming in and taking 15 shots a game, functioning as the secondary ball handler. He is effectively taking shots away or just opportunities away from Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, those guys. Like, I get it. Gordon Hayward as a basketball player is good. I'm not saying he isn't. Obviously, his shooting component, his playmaking, even his rebounding, like there's a lot to like in Gordon Hayward. But what's the end game here? So even if they make the playoffs and all that, like if they hang on to him and he turns 33 and 34, then his trade value is going to absolutely plummet. Yeah, okay, sure, then he like expires and then you pivot to something else in free agency, but why? When you could flip him now and presumably get something in return that would be good, that could maybe accelerate your process, but without going too far into this idea of having 30-year-olds on the roster. I think you need to choose a side predominantly. I'm not saying you can't have veterans if you're a young team, and I'm also not saying that you can't have kids if you have an old team. I'm just saying you need to have a balance that makes sense. Like right now, Gordon Hayward is so ball dominant in a sense that he just takes these development opportunities away from other people's. Like he doesn't do it intentionally. He's on the roster to do these things. I just wonder if that's the right approach if you think 3 years down the line. Like, what if he, just by his sheer presence, is going to block some very vital development minutes or development touches for other players? Then what? What do you do if you're the Hornets?
Right. And you can make the same argument for Kelly Oubre, who they brought in this offseason, on what, compared to what
he is younger.
Yeah, but like compared to what he wanted contractually, like he wanted reportedly 4 years, 80 million. They got him 2 years, 25, and only 5 million is guaranteed next year. So I do wonder if, again, those guys are there to help win now, but also you mentioned a potential trade down the line. Like maybe they brought those guys, Kelly Oubre especially, like that should be a pretty valuable trade chip, I would think, at the deadline if he plays better than he did in Golden State last year. And I think playing next to a guy like LaMelo and even Hayward, who's a good passer, Terry Rozier can create as well. Like he's going to have a lot of opportunities handed to him, I would think. And going back to the starting lineup question too, like I would hate to see him start over Miles Bridges, but I could also see it happen.
Yeah, so we probably need to go into the Miles Bridges discussion, Brian, because I think he should be part of the core moving forward.
Yes, I agree. But he had a great year last year. Right?
Yet it seems like he's just not being prioritized to the same extent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't know. Are you basing that off of him not having a contract extension now or what?
Well, that's one part, but also like last year, he only started 19 games. Clearly he got moved to the bench, and that was after starting full-time the year before. Mm-hmm. Like he's a hard worker. Everything I read about this kid is that he's a super hard worker. He's very, very dedicated to his craft. We're seeing him get better in a lot of areas every single year. What am I missing here? Why is he just not given a greater chance to shine? Getting more shots, getting a bigger role in the offense. Like, he is not all flash. I mean, the guy developed from a free throw line, got better as a shooter. He's a more refined passer. Defensively, he's more crisp than ever. Mm-hmm. What the hell am I missing here for him to just get like a full-time starting job, averaging 32 minutes per game and getting a sizable chunk of the offensive responsibility? Why isn't he given that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question because he shot a career best 50.3% last year, 40% from three on 4.4 attempts per game. So the efficiency was higher than ever. Yep. He averaged slightly fewer points than he did before because he took 2.2 fewer shots per game. That's kind of where I'm going. When I ask about the starting lineup, you nailed it with like, how do you balance the win now versus win later? Like, I think Hayward's going to start, but do you start Oubre or Miles Bridges at the 4? Like that's kind of the developmental question you need to ask yourself, because in theory, as long as you're willing to pay up for Miles Bridges, like he should be part of this long-term core. He is such a good fit next to LaMelo in particular because he is so damn springy and athletic. When those two guys run in transition, it's over. Like they are such a lethal combination. Yeah. So I would
this is basically Trey LaMelo, or sorry, this is Trey's LaMelo, and John Collins could be Miles Bridges, or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for some reason, we're not painting Miles Bridges net brush.
Yeah, no, I don't get it either. But I want to, before we move on, I want to ask about the rookies as well. So, Charlotte is not quite as deep as Atlanta is. So I think there is going to be some room for James Bouknight and Kai Jones to get into the rotation here. What are your expectations for those two guys this year?
So Bouknight, I kind of like. I think, offensively, he needs to sharpen his three-pointer a little bit, but I don't think that is a major concern. I know that was a concern for him coming into the draft. And yeah, you kind of wanted him to shoot the rock better at UConn. But when you look at him play, and when you look at the release, and when you look at the fluid motion that he has, it's very much down on my list of priorities. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think it's going to be something that takes care of itself. Like, he just needs to refine certain things, and that's kind of it. So I expect him to come in and be an offensive presence right off the bat. And at least I would want him to, which is also goes back to why I was a little bit skeptical of why you kind of, keep Gordon Hayward around, because I think there are so many opportunities here. Like, you have Bouknight, you have Oubre, you have Miles Bridges, you have PJ Washington. Like, the small and power forward position should be completely loaded right now. But no, I expect him to come in and just be someone who can take care of the offense in the second unit. Not necessarily as the primary ball handler or anything, but someone who takes charge and says, you know what, let me go get it. Like, let me get to the basket. Let me go create a mid-range jump shot for myself. Like, let me go just get you buckets. And as for Kai Jones, I just expect energy right now. Like you said, he is still raw. There's a lot to like there, but he's going to have some highlight plays. He's going to have some lobs. He's going to just be this very energetic 4 or 5 hybrid initially. And then we'll see. Like, maybe he spends this summer trying to refine some of his interior skills. Maybe he comes in more ready. Who knows? I'm keeping the door open on that. But I definitely have expectations of him being in the rotation, maybe not to the extent of 25 minutes per game, but like 12 and 15, and seeing what he can do. And then if he has a couple good moments, hopefully he's going to give it a little bit more of an opportunity to play. So, it remains to be seen. And I'm also not out, I should say, on JT Thor. I mean, I understand that he plays a position that is already kind of loaded on that team. But I don't think that matters. There's a lot of athleticism there. There's a lot of intrigue and potential. So I do think here and there, they will roll out the kids and just say, go ball, just go hoop. Like, especially during blowouts, or if they come off to a bad start and, the blowouts on the other side of it, and like the game is over by halftime, like, roll out the kids. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Well, I'll end it with this. Charlotte will not be last on my league pass rankings. That I feel like they've been very much toward the bottom for the last couple of years, because they have these fun kids now. They're going to be much higher than usual.
And we didn't even mention Vernon Carey, who I think could come in and have a better year next year. Who, again, 6'9", could play the 4, could play the 5. Look, everything here to me just points to trade Gordon Hayward.
It wouldn't be surprised if that happens.